staring at Eliza's raw, vulnerable plea. A frown creased his brow. A wrong number, undoubtedly. Yet, something in its stark honesty, its quiet desperation, made him pause, a momentary stillness in the vortex of his high stakes world. Before we unravel this accidental encounter and the perilous, life altering path it carves for them both, make sure you're subscribed and have hit the notification bell for more gripping cinematic dramas where ordinary lives collide with extraordinary fates. Eliza's own phone chimed with a reply that made her blood run cold. I believe you have the wrong number. I'm not Daniel. Horror washed over her. She checked the sent message, her stomach churning as she spotted the misdialed final digit. Oh, damn it, she breathed, her hand flying to her mouth. I am so incredibly sorry, she typed with frantic speed. My mistake. Please disregard. She tossed the phone onto the worn sofa as if it had burned her, mortification searing through her exhaustion. Another failure. Another misstep in a life that felt increasingly like a minefield. Julian Thorne, however, didn't simply disregard it. He found himself rereading the brief exchange. The mention of baby milk, the quiet humility of the apology. His own executive assistant, Beatrice, would have archly suggested he was merely procrastinating on the dense acquisition reports piled on his mahogany desk. His ex-wife might have diagnosed another one of his impulsive, unpredictable moments. Perhaps both held a sliver of truth. Is your baby going to be all right? He found himself typing, the question surprising even him. When the unexpected message appeared on Eliza's screen, she blinked in confusion. Why would a stranger care? Her well-honed caution, a shield built from too many disappointments, immediately flared. She'd heard enough online horror stories, but the gnawing hunger in Clara's soft cries, the sheer weight of her desolation, chipped away at her defenses. We'll manage, she replied, her tone deliberately curt. Apologies for the disturbance. The reply was almost instantaneous. I could help. No obligations. Eliza let out a dry, humorless snort. In her experience, obligations were the invisible ink on every offer of help. Thank you, but I don't accept financial assistance from strangers, she typed back, a small act of defiance against her crumbling reality. A sensible policy, came the reply. A brief pause, then, I'm Julian, so now perhaps not entirely a stranger. What brand of milk does your baby require? Eliza's own phone chimed with a reply that made her blood run cold. I believe you have the wrong number. I'm not Daniel. Horror washed over her. She checked the sent message, her stomach churning as she spotted the misdialed final digit. Oh, damn it, she breathed, her hand flying to her mouth. I am so incredibly sorry, she typed with frantic speed. My mistake. Please disregard. She tossed the phone onto the worn sofa as if it had burned her, mortification searing through her exhaustion. Another failure. Another misstep in a life that felt increasingly like a minefield. Julian Thorne, however, didn't simply disregard it. He found himself rereading the brief exchange, the mention of baby milk, the quiet humility of the apology. His own executive assistant, Beatrice, would have archly suggested he was merely procrastinating on the dense acquisition reports piled on his mahogany desk. His ex-wife might have diagnosed another one of his impulsive, unpredictable moments. Perhaps both held a sliver of truth. Is your baby going to be all right? He found himself typing, the question surprising even him. When the unexpected message appeared on Eliza's screen, she blinked in confusion. Why would a stranger care? Her well-honed caution, a shield built from too many disappointments, immediately flared. She'd heard enough online horror stories, but the gnawing hunger in Clara's soft cries, the sheer weight of her desolation, chipped away at her defenses. We'll manage, she replied, her tone deliberately curt. Apologies for the disturbance. The reply was almost instantaneous. I could help. No obligations. Eliza let out a dry, humorless snort. In her experience, obligations were the invisible ink on every offer of help. Thank you, but I don't accept financial assistance from strangers, she typed back, a small act of defiance against her crumbling reality. A sensible policy, came the reply. A brief pause, then, I'm Julian. So now, perhaps, not entirely a stranger. What brand of milk does your baby require? Eliza stared at the words, a battle raging within her. suspicion warring with a desperate flickering ember of hope. Why would anyone, a complete unknown, offer such unprompted kindness? Julian, from his panoramic vantage point overlooking the sprawling metropolis, might have struggled to articulate his own motives clearly. He saw the city lights, cold and distant, and thought of other lights, long extinguished. "Let's just say I've been very fortunate in my life," he texted, "and I vividly recall times when I was not." It was a carefully curated version of his truth, but not a falsehood. Eliza's resolve, already eroded by days of sleepless nights and mounting anxiety, crumbled further. Clara's specific Nurtura Prime milk was expensive, the only one that didn't send her into hours of colicky screaming. The knowledge gnawed at her. "I still don't feel right about this," she typed, her fingers hovering over the send button. "What's your digital payment username?" Julian asked, cutting through her hesitation. What, truly, did she have left to lose? She could block him if things turned sinister. She sent her username, a simple string of characters that felt like a monumental gamble. Seconds later, her phone vibrated. A notification flashed. Eliza gasped, her hand flying to her mouth again, this time in sheer disbelief. This Julian hadn't sent the $50 she'd so shamefully begged for. He'd sent $500. "This is far too much," she typed, her fingers fumbling on the small screen. "I cannot accept this. I meant only—" "Consider it an advance for the coming months," Julian replied smoothly. "One less burden for you to carry." Tears, hot and unexpected, sprang to Eliza's eyes, blurring the phone screen. She hadn't cried when the financial consultancy, Stanton and Finch, had downsized her department 2 months prior. She hadn't cried when Daniel, her only brother and steadfast support, had relocated across the country for a new job, leaving her feeling utterly adrift. She hadn't even shed a tear when her landlord had callously slipped the glaring red late rent notice under her door just yesterday. But this sudden, inexplicable act of kindness from a man she didn't know, whose face she couldn't picture, unleashed something held captive deep within her. "Thank you," she typed, the two simple words feeling utterly inadequate to convey the tidal wave of gratitude washing over her. "You are welcome, Eliza," came Julian's reply. "Take good care of Clara." It wasn't until hours later, after she'd returned from the 24-hour superstore, her arms laden with not just Nurtura Prime, but also diapers and actual groceries, that a sudden, icy realization gripped her, a chilling detail that pricked through the fog of her relief. She had never once, in their entire exchange, mentioned her daughter Clara's name. The following morning, Eliza awoke to the insistent ping of another message from the enigmatic Julian. "I trust you and Clara had a more peaceful night. I have a proposition for you." Eliza's guard, momentarily lowered by his generosity, snapped back into place. Here it comes, she thought with a surge of bitterness. The inevitable catch. "What sort of proposition?" she typed back, her tone wary. "Strictly professional, not personal," was the swift, reassuring reply. "I am the CEO of a company named Apex Solutions. We find ourselves in need of someone with high-level accounting skills for a critical short-term project. Your brother Daniel mentioned some time ago that you were seeking new employment." Eliza nearly dropped her phone. Her heart hammered against her ribs. How do you know my brother? How do you know I'm an accountant?" She scrambled to check her social media profiles, a knot of dread tightening in her stomach. All were set to private, her online footprint deliberately minimal. Who was this man? "My apologies for any alarm caused," Julian wrote, his tone measured. "After our exchange yesterday, my curiosity was piqued. Your phone number is strikingly similar to that of Daniel Mason, who, as it happens, is a valued member of our Human Resources Department at Apex. When I mentioned the misdirected text to him this morning, in a purely anecdotal way, of course, he quickly discerned who you must be. He spoke very highly of your accounting acumen." Eliza sank onto her sofa, a turbulent mix of relief and lingering unease churning within her. It was a plausible explanation, certainly. But still, the precision of it all felt unsettling. "So, this was all merely a coincidence?" she asked, needing to hear it plainly. "Entirely," Julian confirmed. "Though perhaps a fortunate one for us both. We are genuinely in need of assistance, reconciling a number of complex accounts prior to a significant company acquisition. It's a 3-month contract with the potential for a permanent placement thereafter. Would you be interested in discussing an interview? Eliza's mind reeled. It seemed too neat, too serendipitous. Yet Daniel did work in HR for some large tech firm. She'd never paid much heed to the specifics, and her own relentless job search had yielded nothing but a string of demoralizing silences. Could she truly afford to dismiss this extraordinary opportunity based purely on suspicion, however strong? I would be interested in learning more, she typed finally, her caution still evident. But I require a degree of flexibility. I have Clara, and reliable childcare is... Apex Solutions offers on-site childcare for its employees, Julian responded almost before she'd finished typing. And flexible working hours are standard for contract professionals. Please come to our headquarters tomorrow at 10. I'll inform reception to expect you. As Eliza prepared Clara's morning bottle, the rich Nurtura Prime now reassuringly stocked, she couldn't shake the persistent, nagging feeling that crucial pieces of this puzzle were still missing. The coincidences felt too perfectly aligned, the timing almost too convenient. But with her savings dwindling to almost nothing, and rent looming like a dark cloud, did she truly possess the luxury of interrogating this unexpected gift horse? What she couldn't know was that across the city, in his own world of high finance and intricate power plays, Julian Thorne was wrestling with his own set of second thoughts, a flicker of doubt, wondering if his impulsive, unorthodox actions had set them both on a path with unforeseen and potentially hazardous consequences. The Apex Solutions tower loomed before Eliza like a monument of polished chrome and sun-reflecting glass, a symbol of a world utterly removed from her own. She adjusted Clara's carrier on her arm, straightened the shoulders of her carefully preserved professional dress, a relic from her days at Stanton and Finch, and taking a deep breath, pushed through the silently revolving doors. The security officer at the expansive marble reception desk offered a polite smile as she approached. "Ms. Eliza Mason?" he inquired before she could utter a word. At her surprised nod, he continued. "Mr. Thorne's office is on the uppermost floor. His executive assistant, Beatrice, will meet you by the elevators." The seamless efficiency with which she was guided through the opulent, hushed lobby and into a silent, high-speed elevator only amplified Eliza's sense of surreal unreality. This was a far cry from any job interview she'd ever experienced, especially for what she presumed was a temporary accounting role. An elegant, composed woman in her late 50s, Beatrice, met her as promised when the elevator doors whispered open onto a private landing. She led Eliza not to a sterile conference room or a bustling HR department, but directly into a vast corner suite where floor-to-ceiling windows offered breathtaking panoramic views that momentarily eclipsed Eliza's deep-seated anxiety. "Mr. Thorne will be with you in a moment," Beatrice said, her voice calm and modulated, gesturing towards a comfortable seating area. "May I offer you something? Coffee? Mineral water?" "Water would be lovely, thank you," Eliza replied, carefully placing Clara's carrier on the supple leather of the nearby sofa. The baby, mercifully, was still asleep, lulled by the unfamiliar motion. Eliza used the brief solitude to absorb her surroundings. The office, despite its grandeur, possessed a surprising warmth. Rich mahogany bookshelves lined one wall, filled not just with business tomes, but also with worn literary classics. Framed photographs dotted the expansive desk. None personal, she noted, all artfully chosen landscapes. Intriguingly, a collection of antique celestial maps, beautifully framed, adorned another wall, an incongruous touch amidst the expected symbols of corporate dominance. "She looks remarkably peaceful," a deep voice commented from the doorway. Eliza turned, startled to see a tall, powerfully built man observing her with an expression of keen, quiet interest. His tailored suit, undoubtedly bespoke, couldn't entirely conceal the athletic frame beneath, and the fine lines around his piercing blue eyes softened what might otherwise have been an imposing, even intimidating presence. This, she realized with a sudden jolt that tightened her chest, was Julian Thorne, the man who had sent her $500 for baby milk, the stranger who had somehow orchestrated this improbable meeting. "Mr. Thorne," she managed, rising quickly, perhaps a little too quickly. Thank you for seeing me. Julian, please, he corrected, moving into the room with an easy grace. He extended a hand. His grip was firm, brief, professional. And thank you for coming in on such precipitous notice. An awkward silence hung in the air for a moment, both acutely aware of the extraordinary, almost bizarre, circumstances that had brought them to this opulent room. I feel I owe you an explanation regarding yesterday's text messages, he began finally, taking a seat in an armchair opposite her. I don't usually make a habit of sending funds to misdialed numbers. And I don't make a habit of accepting them, Eliza countered, surprised by the strength in her own voice. To be honest, I'm still not entirely comfortable with how this all transpired. Julian nodded, his expression unreadable, yet conveying a sense of respect for her directness. That's entirely fair. The truth is, your message arrived at a rather particular moment for me. Yesterday was the anniversary of my daughter Sophie's death. Eliza's breath caught in her throat. Oh, I am so very sorry. Sophie would have turned 8 this year, he continued, his gaze momentarily drifting towards Clara's carrier, a flicker of profound, tightly controlled pain in his eyes. Leukemia. She fought for 3 long years. An instinctive, protective gesture made Eliza reach out and lightly touch Clara's carrier. Julian's gaze returned to her, acknowledging the silent motion. When I received your text, your plea for help for your child, it felt like, I don't know, a chance, perhaps, to offer a measure of help in a way I was powerless to help her. The raw honesty of his explanation disarmed Eliza completely. The tight knot of suspicion she had been nursing, the fear that this was some elaborate, cynical setup, or worse, that he harbored inappropriate expectations in return for his financial assistance, began to unravel, to dissolve under the weight of his shared grief. And the job offer? She asked, her voice softer now, more cautious than accusatory. Entirely legitimate, I assure you, he replied. The connection with your brother was, as I said, coincidental. However, when I mentioned the peculiar nature of the wrong number text to our HR team this morning, Daniel immediately recognized the details and, quite frankly, expressed his concern for your situation. He hadn't realized things were quite so strained for you. Eliza felt a flush creep up her neck. Daniel doesn't know the full extent of how difficult things have become. I didn't want to burden him while he's just started his new role there. Family pride, Julian observed, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. I understand something of that myself. He passed her a sleek, leather-bound folder. These are the pertinent details regarding the contract position. 3 months, full benefits package, a competitive salary. We are in the final stages of a major acquisition and require an expert to reconcile a number of highly complex, sensitive financial records before the deal closes. Eliza quickly scanned the documents, her accountant's eye immediately drawn to the figures. The offered salary was considerably more than she had earned at her previous position at Stanton & Finch before the layoffs. This is very generous for a temporary contract, she commented, trying to keep the surprise from her voice. We believe in compensating for exceptional quality, Julian replied smoothly. Daniel provided me with a copy of your resume, top of your class at Northwood University, 2 years of stellar performance at Stanton & Finch. If anything, Ms. Mason, you are overqualified for this specific short-term role. Beatrice re-entered with a tray, offering chilled water and freshly brewed coffee, providing Eliza a much-needed moment to gather her scattered thoughts. The job was clearly real. The salary was a lifeline, yet one critical question still nagged at her. Why didn't you just tell me who you were from the outset? She asked, after Beatrice had discreetly withdrawn. In the text messages, I mean. Julian sipped his coffee, his gaze thoughtful. Candidly, if I had begun with, "Hello, I'm a CEO, let me solve your financial woes," would you have believed me? Would you have engaged further? Probably not, Eliza conceded honestly. And then there's the undeniable fact that this entire situation is rather unorthodox, he added, a wry twist to his lips. Our board of directors might raise an eyebrow or two regarding my personal outreach to a prospective candidate found via a misdialed text for baby milk. As if on cue, Clara stirred in her carrier, emitting the small increasingly fretful noises that Eliza recognized as the precursor to a full-blown hunger cry. With practiced, efficient movements, she lifted her daughter and reached for the diaper bag at her feet. "May I?" Julian asked, his voice surprisingly gentle, gesturing towards a discreet door near his desk. "There's a small, private kitchen and lounge area through there. It might offer more privacy for you and Clara." Eliza nodded, a surge of gratitude momentarily overriding her lingering reservations. She slipped into what was, indeed, a beautifully appointed private break room, complete with a comfortable armchair and changing facilities. As she prepared Clara's bottle, her mind raced, weighing her options. The job offer seemed genuine. The company was undeniably reputable. She'd confirmed that much with a quick search on her phone during the subway ride to the Apex Tower. And yet, the sheer improbability of the circumstances remained, a persistent undercurrent of strangeness that gave her pause. When she returned to the main office, Clara now settled and nursing contentedly, Julian was on the phone, his voice low, tense, almost unrecognizable from his earlier calm demeanor. "I don't give a damn what Harrison thinks the projections are. We are not divesting that division. Because I gave my word to those employees. That's why." He caught sight of Eliza and swiftly, though not abruptly, ended the call. "My apologies," he said, his composure resurfacing, though a trace of the earlier tension still lingered in his eyes. Acquisition negotiations invariably have their fraught moments. Eliza settled back onto the couch with Clara cradled in her arms. "It sounds complicated." "Business usually is," he replied, his gaze softening as he watched her expertly feed the baby. "You have a natural grace with her." "I had to learn quickly," Eliza said softly, a shadow crossing her face. "Her father departed the scene the moment he learned I was pregnant. It's just been Clara and me." Julian's expression darkened almost imperceptibly. "His profound loss," he said, his voice quiet but firm. The conversation then shifted to the specifics of the accounting project, the hours, the precise responsibilities, the tight project timeline. Eliza found herself gradually relaxing as they delved into familiar territory. Spreadsheets, reconciliation processes, financial compliance. This, at least, was a language she understood, a world where she felt competent, capable. "One final matter," Julian said as their meeting seemed to be drawing to a close. "Our on-site daycare facility is excellent, world-class, in fact. However, it currently has a waiting list of several weeks. Until a dedicated spot becomes available for Clara, would you be comfortable utilizing the small private conference room within this office suite? Lily would, of course, be most welcome. We can arrange for whatever she might need." The offer was another surprise, another layer of unexpected accommodation. "That's unusually considerate, Mr. Thorne." "I told you, Ms. Mason, we require your skills urgently," Julian replied, though the nuanced expression in his eyes suggested there might be more to it than just that. "And given the highly sensitive nature of the pre-acquisition data you'll be handling, maintaining utmost confidentiality is paramount." As if summoned by an unseen signal, Beatrice appeared discreetly at the doorway. "Mr. Thorne, your 10:30 appointment is waiting in the main reception." Julian rose, extending his hand once more. "So, Eliza Mason, do we have an accord? Are you prepared to join Apex Solutions?" Eliza hesitated for only a heartbeat before taking his outstretched hand. The handshake was firm, sealing an unspoken agreement. "Yes, Mr. Thorne. Thank you for this extraordinary opportunity." "Excellent. Beatrice will assist you with all the necessary paperwork. You can begin on Monday, if that suits." He paused at the door, turning back for a moment. "And Eliza," he added, his voice softer now, "the $500, that was a gift, not an advance. There is no need for repayment." Before she could formulate a protest, a thank you, anything at all, he was gone, leaving Eliza Mason with the distinct, disquieting, yet undeniably thrilling impression that her life, and Clara's, had just veered onto a new, unforeseen, and profoundly altering course in ways she couldn't possibly yet imagine. What she didn't see was Julian Thorne pausing in the quiet corridor outside, retrieving a worn photograph from his wallet. A smiling woman holding a laughing baby girl, Sophie. He stared at it for a long, silent moment, a complex tapestry of emotions playing across his face, before carefully tucking it away, straightening his shoulders, and striding purposefully to meet his next appointment, the fate of Apex Solutions, and now perhaps much more, resting squarely upon them. 3 weeks into her contract at Apex Solutions, Eliza had settled into a work routine that still felt touched by the surreal. Each morning, she and a gurgling Clara would ascend in the hushed, private elevator to the top floor, where Beatrice would greet them with a genuinely warm smile and, more often than not, a perfectly brewed cup of coffee for Eliza. The small, glass-walled conference room adjacent to Julian's imposing office had been seamlessly transformed into a highly functional, surprisingly cozy workspace for her, complete with an ergonomic chair, dual high-resolution monitors, and even a portable crib, discreetly placed in one corner for Clara's naps. The financial reconciliation project itself was intricate, demanding, precisely the kind of complex, detailed work Eliza had excelled at and, frankly, missed, before Clara's arrival had temporarily derailed her career trajectory. The discrepancies she'd been specifically tasked to investigate were subtle, almost invisible to an untrained eye, yet they formed a consistent, disquieting pattern. Small financial aberrations, individually insignificant, but collectively hinting at something far more troubling lurking beneath the polished veneer of Apex Solutions accounts. These numbers, they just don't reconcile, Eliza murmured to herself late one afternoon, her brow furrowed in concentration as she cross-referenced labyrinthine spreadsheets on her monitors. On the plush playmat spread on the floor, Clara babbled happily, batting at a collection of colorful, soft animal toys that Beatrice had, with an almost magical foresight, produced on Eliza's second day. A soft, unobtrusive knock on the conference room door shattered her intense focus. Julian Thorne stood in the doorway, his usually immaculate tie loosened, his expression shadowed with a weariness she hadn't seen before. "Making progress, I trust?" he asked, his voice low. He entered and immediately, as had become his habit, crouched down to greet Clara, who shrieked with pure, unadulterated delight at his attention, reaching out her tiny hands towards him. The infant, against all odds, had developed an inexplicable, powerful attachment to Julian Thorne, her face lighting up like a miniature beacon whenever he appeared. "Some," Eliza replied, a knot of apprehension tightening in her stomach as she watched their easy interaction. It was a warmth that still felt both comforting and strangely precarious. "But I've uncovered something rather concerning. In the Silverstream subsidiary accounts." Julian's focus, which had softened considerably while interacting with Clara, snapped back to professional sharpness instantly. His eyes narrowed. "Show me." Eliza swiveled her chair, pulling up the relevant digital files, her voice concise and professional as she explained the intricate pattern she'd painstakingly unearthed. "These variances, Mr. Thorne, they're too consistent, too meticulously disguised to be accidental accounting errors. Someone has been systematically siphoning relatively small, difficult-to-trace amounts from multiple accounts within Silverstream, then skillfully covering their tracks with adjusted journal entries and falsified reconciliation reports." Julian's expression darkened progressively as he leaned over her shoulder, his gaze intently scanning the screen, absorbing the data. How much are we potentially talking about here, Ms. Mason?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "Based on my preliminary analysis, approximately $4 million. "Over the past 18 months, Eliza stated, her own voice barely above a whisper. Julian straightened, running a hand through his dark hair, now noticeably streaked with silver at the temples. "Are you absolutely certain of this?" A flicker of something, guilt perhaps, or was it concern, crossed his face, so fleeting she almost doubted she'd seen it. "It's precisely why you hired me, isn't it?" she countered, her gaze steady, direct. "To find exactly this kind of thing." "Yes, of course," he confirmed, his composure regained. "I need you to prepare a complete, fully documented report. And Ms. Mason, this information must not leave this room. Do not share it with anyone else in the company yet. Not Daniel, no one." "Not even your CFO?" Eliza asked, the question sharp with surprise. Julian's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Especially not Marcus Vance. Not until we understand the full scope of this." After he'd left, The heavy silence of the conference room pressing in on her, Eliza leaned back in her chair, deeply troubled by the exchange. Why would the CEO of Apex Solutions want to conceal potential multi-million-dollar embezzlement from his own chief financial officer? Unless... No, she muttered, shaking her head, trying to dispel the unwelcome thought. Don't go fabricating elaborate conspiracies. But the insidious seed of doubt, once planted, had already begun to take root. That evening, long after Clara was asleep in their now considerably more comfortable city apartment, a direct result of her Apex salary, Eliza, fueled by a potent mix of professional curiosity and a growing personal unease, launched her own covert investigation. Spreading printouts across her small kitchen table, she delved deeper. By midnight, hunched over her personal laptop, a disturbing timeline began to emerge. The sophisticated financial discrepancies, the cleverly masked embezzlements from the Silverstream subsidiary had all commenced with startling precision shortly after Marcus Vance had been appointed chief financial officer, following the abrupt, largely unexplained resignation of his highly respected predecessor. The following morning, Eliza arrived at Apex Solutions earlier than her usual start time, a grim determination etched on her face. She needed to speak with Julian before the relentless tide of the day's meetings began. To her surprise, his expansive office was dark, the door ajar. This was highly unusual. Julian Thorne was typically the first to arrive, his presence a constant before sunrise. As she hesitated, a text notification illuminated her phone screen. An unknown number. Emergency board meeting called overnight. Unexpected. Use the time to finalize your embezzlement report. Will confer later today. J. The cryptic, unsigned message did little to alleviate Eliza's mounting unease. She settled Clara in her designated play area within the conference room, the soft gurgles of the baby, a small comfort in the oppressive silence, and dived back into the labyrinthine financial records, systematically expanding her search parameters. By lunchtime, her suspicions had hardened into a chilling certainty. Someone very high up within the executive ranks of Apex Solutions was orchestrating a systematic large-scale embezzlement of funds, and the intricate pattern of the fraud strongly suggested an intimate, expert knowledge of the company's internal financial oversight systems, a knowledge most likely possessed by the CFO. Eliza was so profoundly engrossed in tracing a particularly convoluted series of transactions that she didn't register Marcus Vance's presence until he was standing in her doorway, his imposing, broad-shouldered figure effectively blocking the light, casting a long, unwelcome shadow across her desk. "Ms. Mason," he said, his voice a smooth, silken purr that failed to conceal the undercurrent of menace. "Hard at work, I perceive." Eliza instinctively minimized the highly sensitive spreadsheet on her screen, her heart leaping into her throat. "Mr. Harmon, Mr. Vance," she corrected herself, flustered. "Good morning. Can I help you with something?" The CFO's smile, Eliza noted with a fresh wave of alarm, did not even remotely reach his cold, calculating eyes. "I understand you've been diligently working on some special project, shall we say, directly for our esteemed CEO, Julian Thorne. Curious, wouldn't you agree, that he chose not to involve the finance department in such a critical undertaking? Just some routine reconciliation work for the upcoming Silverstream acquisition integration," Eliza replied, her voice deliberately vague, her heart now hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. "Nothing particularly exciting." Marcus Vance stepped further into the room, his gaze lingering for a moment on Clara, who watched him with wide, solemn, unblinking eyes from her playmat. "A most convenient arrangement you seem to have here, Ms. Mason," he observed, his eyes returning to her, a subtle, unpleasant insinuation lacing his tone. "A private office, adjacent to the CEO's no less. The liberty to bring your child to work. Julian must hold your skills in exceptionally high regard." The insinuation was no longer subtle. It was a clear, sharp barb, and it made Eliza's cheeks burn with a mixture of indignation and rising fear. "Mr. Thorne values efficiency and discretion," she said, her voice impressively stiff, betraying none of the turmoil within. "And I have indeed identified several significant issues within the Silverstream accounts that require his immediate attention." "I have no doubt you have, Ms. Mason," Marcus Vance replied, his tone making it unequivocally clear he believed something entirely different, something sordid, was transpiring. Just bear in mind, if you will, that Apex Solutions was operating perfectly adequately long before your unexpected arrival, and it will undoubtedly continue to do so long after your temporary contract concludes. After he left, leaving a palpable chill in the air, Eliza sat for a long moment, trembling, a volatile cocktail of anger and genuine fear coursing through her. The CFO's veiled threats, his insinuations, had only served to confirm her deepest suspicions. Marcus Vance knew she was close to uncovering his crimes, and he perceived her as a serious threat. But it also chillingly suggested something worse, that others within the company, perhaps even on the board, might readily perceive her unique arrangement with Julian as something unprofessional, something illicit, making her an easy target for discredit. She was still struggling to process the disturbing encounter, her mind racing through possible scenarios, when her desk phone shrilled, the unfamiliar extension number flashing on its small display. "Eliza Mason speaking," she answered, her voice retaining its professional composure despite the tremor in her hand. "Ms. Mason, good morning. This is Detective Holloway with the City Police Financial Crimes Division." The woman's voice on the other end was brisk, no nonsense, official. "I understand you are currently engaged as a contract accountant at Apex Solutions. Is that correct?" Eliza's blood seemed to turn to ice in her veins. Yes, that is correct. "We are conducting an investigation into certain financial irregularities reported within Apex Solutions accounts. I would like to schedule a time to ask you a few pertinent questions regarding your recent work there." I'm not certain what information I could possibly provide," Eliza stammered, her eyes darting anxiously towards Clara, who had started to fuss, sensing her mother's distress. "Perhaps it would be more conducive if we continued this conversation at our downtown offices," the detective suggested, her tone leaving little room for refusal. "This afternoon, if that's convenient for your schedule." By the time Julian Thorne finally returned from his protracted, tumultuous emergency board meeting close to 3 o'clock, his face etched with exhaustion and anew, grim lines of worry, Eliza was nearly frantic with accumulated anxiety and fear. She immediately pulled him into the relative privacy of his main office, firmly closing the heavy door behind them. "The police called me," she blurted out, the words tumbling out in a rush. "The Financial Crimes Division. They want me to come into their headquarters for formal questioning. And Marcus Vance was here earlier, acting incredibly suspicious, making veiled threats about what I'm working on, insinuating—" Julian's face, already pale, seemed to lose another shade of color. "Damn it," he muttered, his voice low and harsh. "Vance is moving faster than I anticipated." He began to pace the length of his opulent office, a caged tiger, then abruptly stopped, turning to face her with an unexpected, almost shocking intensity. "Eliza, I need to tell you something critically important, and I need you, more than anything right now, to trust me implicitly." "Trust you?" she echoed, her voice laced with incredulity, the events of the past few hours culminating in a maelstrom of confusion and fear. "Julian, what in God's name is actually going on here? Am I being set up for something? Am I in danger?" "No," he said, his voice firm, decisive, his eyes locking onto hers. "Precisely the opposite. I need to show you something. Something that will explain everything." He strode to his massive mahogany desk, unlocked a concealed drawer, and retrieved a thick, unassuming manila file. "I haven't been entirely forthright with you, Eliza, about the precise reasons why I hired you." The floor seemed to tilt beneath her feet. What do you mean?" she whispered, a dreadful premonition coiling in her stomach. "You weren't randomly assigned to me through a misdialed text message, Eliza," Julian stated, his voice low, urgent, each word laden with significance. "I've been covertly investigating large-scale internal theft and potential money laundering at Apex for nearly 8 months. We, that is, a very small trusted circle, and I needed someone with exceptional accounting skills from entirely outside the company. Someone with impeccable credentials, no pre-existing connections to our executive team, no loyalties that could be compromised. So, you targeted me?" Eliza felt a wave of nausea, a profound sense of betrayal. Your brother Daniel mentioned you, your qualifications, and your difficult personal situation several months ago during a general discussion about talent acquisition, when we urgently needed someone trustworthy, someone brilliant. I remembered that conversation. Julian's face was etched with genuine regret. The wrong number text from you that day. That part was entirely, astoundingly coincidental. A genuine mistake on your part. But once I cross-referenced the number and realized who you were, who your brother was, I confess I saw an unmissable opportunity, a way to bring you in under a believable pretext. You manipulated me, Eliza whispered, her voice raw, thinking of Clara, of how utterly vulnerable they had been, of the desperate hope his initial kindness had ignited. You exploited my financial desperation, my fear for my child, to give you a legitimate, well-compensated job that you are, by all accounts, exceptionally brilliant at, Julian countered, his gaze unwavering. Yes, Eliza, I had ulterior motives for bringing you to Apex Solutions, but they were not the sinister kind you might be imagining. I am working directly with the Federal Bureau on this investigation. Agent Davies has been my primary contact. His eyes were pleading for her to understand. Marcus Vance isn't merely embezzling corporate funds, as you've uncovered. He's systematically laundering illicit money through our complex network of overseas operations. Millions upon millions. Eliza sank heavily into one of the leather armchairs, her mind struggling to process the dizzying rush of revelations. The detective, the one who called me earlier, Detective Holloway, she's legitimate, Julian confirmed, anticipating her unspoken question. But you need to exercise extreme caution in what you disclose to her, to anyone. We don't yet know the full extent of Vance's network. Who else within Apex, or even within the city's power structure, might be compromised, might be protecting him? Before Eliza could formulate a coherent response, before she could even begin to grapple with the enormity of what he had just revealed, the intercom on Julian's desk buzzed harshly. Beatrice's voice, usually so calm and unflappable, crackled through, laced with an unprecedented urgency. "Mr. Thorne! Julian!" Then, the door to his office burst open, Beatrice herself rushing in without knocking, a protocol she had never, in Eliza's experience, breached before. Her face was pale, her usual composure shattered. "Julian," she said, her voice trembling, "they're here. Apex Corporate Security and the city police. They're saying—" She faltered, her distressed gaze flicking towards Eliza with a mixture of confusion and alarm. "Saying what, Beatrice?" Julian prompted sharply, already moving, his body tensing, his focus instantly shifting to a new, immediate threat. They're saying that you've been embezzling company funds, Julian. They have a warrant for your arrest, and they specifically mentioned a Ms. Eliza Mason as your accomplice." Eliza clutched Clara, who had started to whimper in response to the rising tension, tightly to her chest. A cold, terrifying wave washed over her. This couldn't be happening. It felt like a nightmare, surreal and suffocating. Julian Thorne's face, however, hardened into a mask of grim resolve, his eyes flicking around the room, assessing, calculating. He made a swift, decisive decision. "Beatrice," he commanded, his voice suddenly lethally calm. "The private service elevator. Now! Get Eliza and Clara out of this building immediately. Take them to the Cedar Park safe apartment. You know the protocol." The safe house?" Eliza repeated, her voice barely a whisper. She felt as though she'd been thrust into the incomprehensible plot of some bizarre, high-stakes thriller. "Julian, I can't just—" "Eliza!" he interrupted, his hands gripping her shoulders, his intense gaze boring into hers, demanding her focus. "Listen to me very, very carefully. Marcus Vance knows you've found irrefutable evidence against him. He's desperately trying to frame us both, to discredit you, and remove me before we can expose him. If you stay here, they will separate you from Clara while you're being questioned, and they will twist everything to fit their narrative." The horrifying thought of being forcibly separated from her daughter, even for a few hours, was enough to galvanize Eliza into immediate action. She quickly, though her hands were shaking, gathered Clara's essential things from the adjoining conference room, while Beatrice, her composure remarkably regained, efficiently collected the crucial files and encrypted drives from Eliza's workstation. "What about you?" Eliza asked Julian, her voice filled with a new, urgent concern as Beatrice gently urged her towards a cleverly concealed door hidden behind a large, antique, celestial map on his office wall. "I will handle this," he said, his expression grim, yet infused with a steely determination. "I have allies on the board, people who still value integrity. Just ensure you and Clara stay safe, stay hidden, until I can contact you." He hesitated for a fraction of a second, then added, his voice softening almost imperceptibly, "I am truly, deeply sorry for the deception involved in bringing you here, Eliza, for the fear this has undoubtedly caused you. But I swear to you, everything else, my belief in your abilities, my concern for you and for Clara, that has all been unequivocally real." Before Eliza could fully process the weight of his words, the subtle shift in his tone, Beatrice was guiding her firmly but gently through the hidden passageway, into the waiting private elevator, leaving Julian Thorne to turn and face the approaching storm, alone. The safe apartment, located in a nondescript, secure residential building in the quiet Cedar Park district across town, was modest but comfortable, and as Beatrice had assured her, utterly untraceable to Apex Solutions. Eliza paced the small living room like a caged animal, Clara finally asleep in the portable crib that Beatrice, with her astonishing efficiency, had somehow procured, along with a full supply of Nurtura Prime, diapers, and other essentials. "You seem remarkably prepared for this level of crisis, Beatrice," Eliza observed, watching the older woman methodically arrange supplies in the compact kitchenette. Beatrice's usually pleasant, professional expression was serious, etched with concern. "Mr. Thorne has always believed in prudent contingency planning. When the initial financial discrepancies first appeared on his radar nearly 8 months ago, he knew instinctively that something was profoundly wrong within Apex. So, all of this elaborate setup, it was planned from the very beginning?" Eliza asked, her mind struggling to reconcile the deep sense of betrayal she still felt with the mounting evidence that Julian Thorne had been courageously working to expose high-level corruption, not perpetrate it. "Not all of it, my dear," Beatrice replied, her expression softening with a hint of a smile. "Finding you, specifically your mistaken text message, that was a genuine, unforeseen coincidence, a twist of fate. But Julian, being the astute man he is, instantly recognized an opportunity when it presented itself. Someone with the precise skills they desperately needed, entirely unconnected to Marcus Vance's entrenched network of influence." "But why not simply go to the authorities immediately, from the start?" Eliza pressed. "He did," Beatrice stated, her voice dropping slightly. "He approached certain contacts within the relevant city and federal agencies. But Marcus Vance, it turns out, has cultivated powerful friends in very high places. The initial discreet investigation was quietly, and very quickly, closed due to an alleged lack of substantive evidence." She handed Eliza a steaming cup of herbal tea, her gaze compassionate. Julian understood then that he needed irrefutable, undeniable proof, a meticulously documented case, before he could formally move forward again. He couldn't risk another premature, failed attempt. "Which I found," Eliza realized, the pieces clicking into place with a sickening thud. "The proof he needed. Which you, with your exceptional skills, undoubtedly found," Beatrice confirmed. Eliza sank onto the sofa, the teacup rattling in its saucer as she placed it on the low table, feeling utterly overwhelmed. "And now I'm hiding in a safe house like some character in a cheap spy novel, while Julian is quite possibly being arrested, his reputation destroyed, for crimes he didn't even commit, crimes he was trying to stop." "Julian Thorne can take care of himself, Eliza," Beatrice assured her, though the fine, worry lines around her own eyes betrayed her concern. "He has been meticulously preparing for this very confrontation, this exact scenario, for many, many months." Hours crawled by with agonizing slowness, each tick of the generic wall clock amplifying Eliza's anxiety. There was no word from Julian, no news updates that shed any light on the situation at Apex Solutions. Eliza tried to distract herself by painstakingly reviewing the encrypted files Beatrice had saved from her workstation, her mind sharp and focused now, searching for any additional detail, any overlooked discrepancy that might somehow bolster Julian's case, might help clear his name. Around midnight, just as she was about to succumb to sheer exhaustion, her burner phone, another of Beatrice's provisions, buzzed with a message from an unknown, untraceable number. "Are you and Clara safe?" "Yes," she typed back, her heart pounding, her fingers trembling. "Is this Julian?" "It's me," came the immediate reply. "Had to ditch my regular communication devices. The police confiscated my corporate phone and laptop, but they released me pending further investigation. For now. It seems Vance is playing this very carefully, making it appear as though he is the one who diligently discovered the embezzlement and is cooperating fully." "What happens now?" Eliza typed, her mind racing. "Now," Julian replied, "we use what you found. My primary contact at the Federal Bureau, Agent Davies, is prepared to meet with us tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock sharp." Eliza stared at the message, the single word "us" leaping out at her. "Us?" "If you're willing, Eliza," came the response. "You found the critical evidence. You understand its intricacies. You can explain it far more clearly and compellingly than anyone else." Eliza glanced at Clara, sleeping peacefully in her crib, blissfully unaware of the chaos and danger swirling around their small, fragile world. By agreeing to meet with the Federal Bureau, by stepping forward, she would be thrusting herself directly into a dangerous, high-stakes confrontation, potentially making herself, and by extension Clara, a direct target for Marcus Vance and his undoubtedly ruthless associates. The sensible, rational thing to do would be to take Clara, take the considerable funds Julian had provided, and disappear. Start fresh somewhere far away where the tendrils of Apex Solutions and its corrupt underbelly couldn't reach them. But running would mean Marcus Vance, and those who enabled him, might escape justice entirely. It would mean abandoning Julian Thorne after he had, despite his initial deceptions, risked his career, his reputation, and now it seemed, his very freedom, to do what he believed was right. And everything else? The job offer, the unprecedented accommodations for Clara, the profound respect he had shown for her work, his vulnerability in sharing his own past grief. All of that, she now realized with a sudden, startling clarity, had been undeniably, profoundly genuine. "I'll be there," she replied, her decision made. The following morning, after Beatrice arrived with fresh supplies and an unwavering, reassuring calm to watch over Clara, Eliza met Julian at a nondescript, gray office building in the city's bustling downtown core. He looked utterly exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, his tailored suit rumpled, yet he managed a small, genuinely relieved smile when he saw her approach. "You came," he said, his voice filled with an emotion she couldn't quite decipher. "I almost didn't," Eliza admitted honestly. "A significant part of me still believes this entire situation is certifiably why." "It is certifiably a sham," Julian agreed, a wry twist to his lips as he gently guided her inside the building with a light, steadying hand at her back. "But it's also, unfortunately, critically necessary." The federal agent, a sharp-eyed, no-nonsense woman named Davies, listened with intense, unwavering concentration as Eliza meticulously walked her through the intricate web of her findings, explaining in precise, clear detail how the sophisticated embezzlement scheme operated, how it had been cleverly disguised for so long within Apex Solutions' complex financial architecture. "This is precisely what we needed, Ms. Mason," Agent Davies stated with satisfaction when Eliza finally concluded her presentation, nearly an hour later. "Clear, undeniable, documented evidence of both systematic embezzlement and large-scale international money laundering." She turned her astute gaze to Julian. "The emergency board meeting is scheduled for this afternoon. I understand. Vincent Harmon will undoubtedly be present, expecting to deliver his coup de grace." Julian nodded grimly. "Along with the specific board members who have been providing him cover, yes. They are planning to formally accuse me of the very crimes he has committed, and then vote to remove me as CEO." "Perfect," Agent Davies said, a thin, predatory smile touching her lips. "We'll be ready." The plan they formulated was straightforward in its audacity, yet fraught with risk. Julian would attend the emergency board meeting as expected, appearing vulnerable, perhaps even defeated. Eliza, along with Agent Davies and a small, discreet federal team, would wait in an adjacent secure room, ready to present her irrefutable evidence the moment Marcus Vance made his formal, damning accusations against Julian. The timing would be absolutely crucial. They needed Vance to explicitly, unequivocally lie to the assembled board, to commit perjury, in effect, with federal agents present as witnesses. As they prepared to leave for the Apex Solutions Tower, a silent, tension-filled drive, Julian pulled Eliza aside in the building's sterile parking garage. "Eliza, if for any reason this goes sideways today," he said, his voice low, serious, "Beatrice has explicit, detailed instructions. She will get you and Clara out of the country immediately. There's a dedicated, untraceable account already established in your name, with more than enough funds for you to start over, to build a new life, safely." Eliza stared at him, stunned anew by the sheer depth of his contingency planning, the extent to which he had considered her safety. "It won't come to that, Julian," she said with a surprising surge of confidence she didn't entirely feel. "Just in case," Julian insisted, pressing a small sealed envelope into her hand. "And Eliza, thank you for trusting me, even after everything, for your courage." The Apex Solutions Board meeting began precisely at 3 o'clock. Emma, her heart pounding a nervous rhythm against her ribs, watched the proceedings unfold on a secure video monitor in the adjoining room, Agent Davies and her team observing silently beside her. Marcus Vance, his face a carefully constructed mask of regretful, somber duty, stood to address the gathered executives, who filled the opulent, wood-paneled boardroom. "It pains me deeply to be the one to present these devastating findings," he began, his voice resonating with false sincerity, as assistants distributed thick folders to each board member. "But the evidence, as you will all soon see, is damning, undeniable. Alexander Reed, our esteemed CEO, with the calculated assistance of an outside accomplice, a contract accountant named Eliza Mason, has been systematically, and for a considerable period, diverting substantial company funds to a network of offshore accounts." Emma felt a wave of sickness wash over her as she heard her name spoken with such calculated, venomous malice. On the screen, Julian remained impressively, almost unnervingly calm. "That is indeed a most serious accusation, Marcus," he stated, his voice even, level. "I trust you have irrefutable proof to substantiate such career-ending claims." "The proof, Alexander, is in the documents before you," Marcus Vance replied smoothly, a triumphant gleam in his eye. "Financial records, as you well know, do not lie." "No," Julian agreed, a dangerous glint now in his own eyes. "They do not. Which is precisely why I, too, would like to introduce some additional, highly pertinent evidence to this board." He gave a subtle, almost imperceptible nod towards the main boardroom door, the prearranged signal. Agent Davies moved swiftly, opening the door. Eliza, taking a deep, steadying breath, walked into the Apex Solutions boardroom, Agent Davies and two other plainclothes federal agents flanking her. The shock on Marcus Vance's face was for a fleeting moment immensely satisfying, before it quickly morphed into a mask of icy, calculated composure. "Ms. Mason," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "How convenient. Here, I presume, to vigorously defend your benefactor and partner in crime." "Actually, Mr. Vance," Eliza replied, her voice clear, strong, unwavering, "I am here to explain, in detail, to this board, precisely how you have been systematically stealing millions of dollars from Apex Solutions for the past 18 months." For the next 30 electrifying minutes, Eliza Mason, with cool, professional precision, walked the stunned board of directors through her meticulous findings. She methodically dismantled Marcus Vance's fabricated narrative, explaining how he had created and exploited a sophisticated system of small, difficult-to-detect fund diversions, cleverly hidden accounting adjustments, and falsified financial reconciliations to mask the theft of nearly $4 million. The pattern of fraudulent activity, as you can see from these authenticated transaction logs, Eliza concluded, gesturing to the damning documents now distributed by the federal agents, begins precisely 3 weeks after Mr. Vance assumed the role of chief financial officer. And the complex money trail, which my analysis has painstakingly traced, leads directly and unequivocally to a series of offshore shell companies where Mr. Vance is the sole beneficial owner. Marcus Vance's face had grown increasingly pale, his confident facade crumbling with each damning revelation Eliza's presented. When she finally finished, he shot a desperate, hunted glance towards the boardroom door, clearly calculating his rapidly dwindling chances of escape. "Don't even consider it, Mr. Vance," Agent Davies warned sharply, her gaze unwavering, noting his furtive movement. "This entire building is secured." What happened next unfolded with a shocking, violent suddenness that Eliza would later struggle to recall in precise sequence. Vance, with a guttural roar of pure cornered desperation, lunged across the massive boardroom table, not towards the door, but directly towards her, something small and metallic, a letter opener perhaps, flashing in his hand. Julian moved with astonishing speed, without a moment's hesitation, placing himself directly between Eliza and the enraged CFO. There was a blur of chaotic movement, a tangle of limbs, sharp shouts from the federal agents, and then Marcus Vance was on the polished floor, forcibly restrained, the metallic object clattering harmlessly away. "Julian," Eliza cried out, seeing a dark stain rapidly spreading across the sleeve of his pristine white shirt. "It's merely a scratch," he assured her, his voice tight with pain, though his grimace of discomfort belied his dismissive words. "Though I dare say I might require a new shirt before we conclude the remainder of this eventful meeting." 3 hours later, after Marcus Vance and 2 visibly shaken, clearly complicit board members had been taken into federal custody, after detailed statements had been given and Julian's minor arm wound expertly treated by paramedics, Eliza sat with him in the now quiet, strangely calm atmosphere of his office. Beatrice had brought a thankfully oblivious Clara, who was now contentedly exploring the soft texture of a new plush bunny, while the 2 adults attempted to process the tumultuous day's events. "So," Eliza asked, her voice still betraying a trace of the adrenaline that had coursed through her veins, "what happens now?" She watched Julian gingerly adjust the fresh bandage on his arm. "Professionally, a great deal of damage control," Julian admitted with a weary sigh. "Apex Solutions will survive this, though our planned acquisition will undoubtedly be delayed, perhaps significantly." He hesitated, his gaze meeting hers, a new, softer light in his eyes. "Personally, well, Eliza, that rather depends on you." "On me?" "Your contract technically has 2 months remaining," Julian stated. "However, I would be honored if you would consider accepting a permanent position with Apex, head of a newly created internal audit and financial integrity department, reporting directly and independently to the board." Eliza blinked, genuinely surprised by the magnitude of the offer. That's a significant promotion, Julian. A position of immense responsibility." "You have more than earned it, Eliza," Julian said, his sincerity unmistakable. "You saw, with fresh eyes and unshakable integrity, what highly experienced executives either missed entirely, or in some cases, deliberately chose to ignore. Apex Solutions, indeed any company, needs someone with your skills, your courage, your unwavering moral compass." Eliza looked at Clara, now drifting off to sleep, her small hand still clutching the plush bunny. She thought of the fear, the desperation that had led her to send that mistaken text. She thought of the unexpected kindness, the equally unexpected deceptions, the terrifying dangers, and the profound connections forged in the crucible of the past few months. "And the accommodations? For Clara?" she asked, a small smile playing on her lips. "A priority spot has officially, and with remarkable alacrity, opened up in our on-site corporate daycare," Julian replied, a corresponding smile touching his own lips. "Though, I confess, she is most welcome to continue gracing my office with her delightful presence any time she, or you, might wish." He paused, his expression becoming more serious, his gaze holding hers captive. "Eliza, I am acutely aware that the genesis of our association was less than ideal. I manipulated circumstances, however well-intentioned my ultimate goal, to bring you into this situation, and for the distress that caused, I am truly, deeply sorry. But everything that has transpired since then, getting to know you, watching your incredible strength and resilience, observing your profound love for Clara, witnessing your brilliance and integrity in action, that, Eliza, has been the most real, the most meaningful experience in my life since I lost Sophie. Eliza felt a warm, unfamiliar flutter in her chest, a sensation that had nothing to do with the day's lingering adrenaline, and everything to do with the man sitting across from her, his vulnerability now as evident as his strength. I I need some time to think, Julian, she said honestly. This has all been rather a lot to absorb. Of course, Julian agreed immediately, his understanding absolute. Take all the time you need, Eliza. All the time in the world. 6 months later, the grand ballroom of the Oakhaven City Club buzzed with festive energy for the annual Apex Solutions Holiday Gala. Eliza, now confidently established and highly respected in her new role as head of internal audit, watched with a quiet surge of pride as several members of her newly assembled team received well-deserved recognition for their instrumental work in implementing robust new financial safeguards across the company. Lily, now a determined, slightly unsteady toddler, navigated the space between Eliza and Julian with joyous, squealing enthusiasm. Julian, no longer just her boss, but her partner, her confidant, had long since moved beyond the formal confines of their initial, unconventional meeting. Ready for the second major announcement of the evening? Julian whispered, his hand gently taking hers, his thumb brushing against the elegant, understated engagement ring that still felt new and wonderfully real on her finger. Emma nodded, a radiant smile illuminating her face. They had taken things slowly, deliberately building a foundation of trust and transparency after their tumultuous beginning. The Apex board, now significantly restructured, was already aware of their relationship. Transparency, Eliza had insisted, must be their watchword in both her professional and her deeply personal life. As Julian called for the attention of the gathered employees, his voice warm and filled with happiness as he shared their joyful news, Eliza found herself reflecting on the single, misdialed text message that had inexplicably, miraculously started it all. A desperate plea, born of fear and scarcity, sent to a wrong number that had somehow, against all odds, found its way to exactly the right person, at exactly the right time. Though she still occasionally teased Julian about his knight in shining armor complex, and he in turn about her accidental detective prowess, she couldn't deny the profound, almost magical truth. Sometimes, the most improbable, most unlikely beginnings, woven from mistakes and serendipity, could lead to the most perfectly imperfect, most beautifully real endings. Later that night, as she tucked a sleepy Clara into her small bed in their new home, a home filled with laughter, love, and the comforting presence of the three of them, together at last, Eliza whispered a truth that still, after all this time, filled her with a sense of quiet, grateful amazement. Sometimes, my darling Clara, the very mistakes we believe will irrevocably break us are, in fact, the universe's disguised signposts, gently, or sometimes forcefully, pointing us directly towards where we were always truly meant to be.